So if you're looking to keep riding motorcycles, even though it is getting colder outside, there are gonna be a few critical things you're gonna need to know. Now, I live in Texas. It doesn't get all that cold in Texas, but sometimes it gets down to the 40s, the 30s, and it's wet, and that makes it even worse. And then the windshield speed, it's just terrible. And I'm gonna be honest, I don't really ride that often when it's that cold, that wet, and that crappy outside. However, I just came back from a trip to the Himalayas where I had to ride, where it was a lot colder and a lot wetter than I am used to. So I'm gonna walk you through the changes I made in my cold weather riding kit and how I think you should dress up for the cold. And if you have any comments or improvements on my setup, please let me know down in the comments below, because I am not a cold weather rider. Let me get started talking about the very first thing you need to invest in when it comes to cold weather gear, and that is your jacket. I think having a cold weather specific jacket is going to be a very important thing. Now, a lot of you living in more temperate climates, you never see temperatures above 75 or 80 degrees or so, you probably already have a leather jacket that could maybe even work as a cold weather jacket. As long as it's not perforated, which is really where the wind's gonna start cutting and biting into you, you can put an insulating layer underneath your jacket and you're gonna be just fine. If you pair that with a base layer as well, your core is going to be kept very, very warm. That's the most important thing you wanna keep warm when you're on your motorcycle, is this core area right here. Making sure that your lungs, your heart, your intestinal tract, and all that good giblets you have in the middle of you here are nice and warm is gonna make it easier for you to keep riding your motorcycle. The jacket I used in the Himalayas is the Revit H2O Off Track 2 jacket. That's a jacket that is a little bit more adventure styled, but it comes with a raincoat on top, an insulating layer, lots of different vents. It actually was quite cold, but also quite warm in some places in the Himalayas, and that's something you want to think about when you're considering your cold weather kit. Are you going to go out and ride? Is it going to be cold the entire time, or is it going to get a little bit warmer later in the day, and you're going to have to shed some layers or open up some ventilation? The best thing you can do, like I said, is get a native insulating system for the jacket so that when you're out there riding, it natively fits and mates up to the jacket, but then when you want, you can pop it off, maybe put it in a backpack or a tail bag or something like that. A lot of insulating layers can compress down to a pretty small little package. It's not going to be that bad to carry with you. The second most important thing, I think, are your gloves. Obviously, if your hands get frostbitten and you can't correctly operate the brakes or even twist a throttle, or it's painful to move your hands, you're not going to have fun riding. I really recommend investing in a set of cold weather specific gloves. The pair of gloves I personally use is the Alpine Stars Dry Star glove. These aren't the most heated gloves. You can actually get some with like actual proper heating elements and kind of go crazy with it. You can even get grip warmers on your motorcycle as well. But as long as you have a glove that's going to insulate your hand a little bit better than your average sport street, textile or perforated leather glove, you're gonna be way better off. If you take a look at a classic summer glove, it's full of holes and it's just gonna make sure that you just get as much wind as possible, which is the exact opposite you want when it's cold weather riding. So you wanna make sure your core is nice and protected. You wanna make sure your hands are nice and protected and warm as well, so that you're safe and then that your hands are also able to operate the machine. Now, the third most important thing that I think about when it comes to cold weather riding, and something I had to start doing a couple years ago, is a neck gaiter or a balaclava. It's a scary sounding word, but if you're familiar with it, you already know the deal. Getting a base layer basically for your head or your neck is going to make things so much better. You really don't want cold wind blowing up through your helmet, blowing through all your vents. And if you do have vents on your helmet, make sure that they're closed. Maybe a pin lock visor system on your visor so that you don't get all that foggy craziness happening when your hot breath is going in one side and the cold air is coming on the other side. That's going to make things all foggy and you can't see anything pretty much. So having a neck gaiter or a full-on balaclava makes things so much better because you're so much more comfortable. You don't get all that wind blasting. You're basically trying to prevent areas for the wind to get into. So if you do get a neck gaiter or a balaclava system, you're going to want to make sure it goes into your jacket, put the jacket over it, get yourself nice and snug. Make sure that your gloves go over your jacket, tighten those up really well. Make sure that wind can't get in anywhere or the cold can't get anywhere, because your body's working really hard to try to produce heat in those cold environments. Make sure you don't waste it. You don't want all that heat and energy you're generating to just go out into the open. It's like your dad used to say, I'm not air conditioning the whole neighborhood out here. Don't keep the windows open. That's why you want to make sure that no cold air is seeping out of your equipment. Following up on that, I mentioned base layers. These are a super cheap way to add some really great insulating factors to your whole setup. I just got some really cheapo stuff off of Amazon, Target, wherever you want, Walmart. It really doesn't matter because it's all basically the same equipment. Some of them have a fancy brand on it and they triple the price. You really don't need that stuff. You can buy pretty simple base layers and they will work very, very well. I'd get some long johns for your legs and definitely some for your upper body as well. But as I mentioned, if you're expecting a big wide change in temperature ranges, maybe skip the base layers and just keep an insulating layer underneath your jacket that you can take off rather than keeping a layer on that you can't take off. The last thing that I did was I picked up a pair of SMX 6s from Alpine Stars that were non-perforated. So I used to have, as you guys know, my tried and true boot, the Alpine Stars SMXs. I love that boot, but both of my pairs were perforated because I live here in Texas and I want as much airflow as possible through my boots. But the thing is, when you're riding in the cold weather, again, you don't want cold weather to seep into your areas. So you want to make sure that your boot is nice and enclosed and is not going to cause any issues. You can even get heated boots as well. I really don't think that's quite necessary. Your feet and your toes don't need to be all that warm if you're going to be riding in the cold weather. If you're riding in super extreme cold conditions, stuff like 0 temperatures in Fahrenheit or minus 20 degrees Celsius or whatever it is, you're not really going to want to play around with having frostbite or anything like that. But I've personally never ridden in such cold temperatures. I usually stay to 0 degrees and up Celsius, 32 degrees Fahrenheit and up. So you can pick yourself up some really good cold weather gear over on yammynoob.co. Check out the links in my description. I have all the products I've been talking about mentioned here. You can upgrade your kit for a pretty decent amount of money, not too much. You're going to be able to get yourself a lot more comfortable on the bike by buying some of this stuff. You're definitely going to want to make sure you can stay warm on your motorcycle in those colder weather conditions. Now, something I hear a lot about online is, is it worth it to get heated gear? And I think heated gear has a time and a place. For me personally and my kind of riding setup, I don't really feel the need to have heated gear. The only thing I would like is maybe heated grips, but again, I'm a bit more of a fair weather rider and it's not a super big deal to me to not have heated grips, but they are really, really nice. You can get away with having a much lighter glove and a heated grip combination as opposed to having a super bulky big glove and no heated grips. Again, if you're riding in very, very cold conditions, you're probably going to want to pair both of them together. A nice big bulky glove that's going to provide some good warmth, but also heated grips so that you can grab them and make sure you're nice and warm on your ride. That's going to make a big, big difference. But you can also get heated jackets, heated boots, heated pants. All that stuff can link up via battery, or it can actually go via USB on your motorcycle too. You can use the bike's power to keep you warm. You know, if you have an auxiliary plug on your motorcycle, you can typically plug in a USB and get a little bit of a warming action going on for your jacket or your pants or your boots or whatever you need heated. But again, this is a more complicated element to add to your motorcycle setup, but it can also make it so that you can ride a little bit less like the Michelin Man and have all your extremities kind of puffed out and popped up a little bit, because that does tend to happen whenever you do have the normal kind of gear as well versus having the heated gear. So guys, that's my rundown on what I run for my cold weather gear. Again, I tested this stuff in the Himalayas. It worked pretty dang well for me. I probably won't be riding anywhere colder than that this year, but for those of you that live out there in Colorado or up in the mountains and you want to keep riding even though it's cold, you know, basically you're going to be running the snowmobile setup on your motorcycle. Just make sure all that stuff is nice and tight, nice and away from the wind, and that's going to keep you really well protected. Remember, it's really important to make sure that your hands are able to operate the machine, your core is nice and warm, protect your neck with a neck gaiter or a balaclava, and make sure none of your gear is textile or going to have wind being able to blast through it, because that's not going to be very fun while you're out there on your bike. Hope you've enjoyed today's video. Thank you so much for checking it out. I really do appreciate it. If you have any other cold weather tips, leave them down there in the comments below. I like to treat that as an open forum so people can help each other out, because I don't have all the answers. I'm just a sentient dog on the internet. I'll catch you guys in the next one. See you later.
Keep watching Yammy Nerd.